Good evening. Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources that will hope and help improve your life. I'm Stu Reid. This is my co-host, Dave Burstein. Hey, Dave.
Hello.
How you doing?
Well, I'm actually doing really well, although I'm overwhelmed with how much is going on in AI. Nobody can keep up with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty good at finding the news and so on. But there are two ones I wanted to pull out up top because they're important. The first is that Robbie the Robot has his gun these days.
Uh-oh, look out.
It's worse than that. Uh, Ukraine shot down a Russian uh, airplane that was supposedly using AI and radar to figure out everything going on in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
The Russians, meanwhile, are using AI on their side. Israel is using it very heavily, and the US is backing that. Palantir, Peter Thiel's company that works very closely with the CIA, police departments, and so on,
Okay, I'm
just
not familiar with it. What's the name again, Dave? I don't know that. Palentio?
Palantir.
Okay.
It's an AI company that was set up because all the other AI companies didn't want to do military work,
Mm-hmm.
uh, close to the CIA, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they just announced a quote strategic partnership for battle tech with
Mm.
the Israelis. The
That
U.S.
sounds good.
company will provide services for war-related missions. And Theo and the president of Palantir, David Karp, went to Israel to sign it. And
Mm.
a proud picture of how they are helping that war effort.
Mm.
Uh, everybody, every major country, no, take that back. The largest countries, Russia, China, the US, are heavily involved in bringing AI into the weapons.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite autonomous robots as such, or killer robots. It's more killer drones.
Mm-hmm. So,
Uh,
Dave,
and
I mean, big picture, how's this going to affect warfare? In wars, that it's all about killing people anyway, and grabbing territory. Is it going to happen faster? They're going to kill more efficiently. What do you see the impact and import of AI thrown into the mix?
you're right there. Faster, more
Mm-hmm.
efficient at what wars do.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew this was going to happen.
Yeah. I mean,
AI is
this is another kind of a layman's question. Do you see people being less involved? I mean, on the ground troops? Is it possible that, we have less people being killed because AIs and machines are fighting machines, or will still be the same loss of life, of human life? I know you don't know the answer, but what's it look like from where you see?
so far looking at Ukraine, Russia, and Israel, Palestine. The AI weapons are being used to set targets and are doing that very well.
Hmm.
Now, will that evolve to one day it will be the robots fighting the robots? Not impossible, but I'd be surprised. This
Yeah.
is not my expertise. I know what's in the AI. I
Hmm.
can tell
Hmm.
you in depth how rapidly it's getting better. For example, NASA has just put out a map of the world,
Hmm.
which you can turn around and say, take the clouds off this picture, or what crop is growing there, or how well is that crop growing to get enough rain this year, and so on and so forth for anywhere in the world.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah. And every day I get something like that coming through.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it's pretty technical, but some of them can affect their lives. Now, we reported on this show before that the US and Canada were the only two countries in the Western Hemisphere that refused to sign a declaration that autonomous weapons would always be controlled by people,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that all the people who are afraid of this taking off have been praying for. It's not happening. The senator from Dakota, Rounds, is in Davos this week for the
Mm-hmm.
World Economic Forum. And he made a lot of comments about AI. He's on the Armed Services and Intelligence Committees in the US Senate. And he says, AI will influence how we fight wars. The country with an army or armed services that have employed AI will have a leg up on everybody else. In
Mm-hmm.
other words, because he's being the US government is not giving much information, except very general about what we're doing, but he's
Mm-hmm.
being briefed on all of that. And he's pushing very hard to keep the US ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, that's not going to work. Let us hope we don't go to war with China over Taiwan.
Mhm. Let me just ask you to clarify for a minute for our listeners. You talked about the resolution that was not passed at the UN that will require humans to be involved in deploying autonomous weapons. Just what does that mean? And an autonomous weapon is a weapon that I guess could potentially deploy itself. Is that what that is?
Right. It can fly itself, it can choose its targets.
Mm-hmm.
And the hope was that a human would be on the loop before it chose a target and killed people.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I have no proof whatsoever, but I am almost sure that is not how it's being done in Palestine or in Ukraine today.
Mm-hmm.
That the drones out there are picking their targets and I believe taking them out.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Remember, there's very little reporting from the actual battlefield, especially in Palestine, where most reporters have been kept out, or on the Russian side.
Oh, that's interesting, Dave. Here's another corollary question. Given, the advancement in technology and drones and AI, you would think that reporting could be automated to some degree. There could be cameras out flying and giving us information. I mean, I guess that's a political blanket that has been put over this. What's your take on that? Is AI
I,
being involved in reporting at all?
uh, I haven't seen anything in either of these wars that is using AI for reporting, but
Mm-hmm.
it can be.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the example of the Syrian opposition. Most of the Syrian opposition is ISIS like thugs, but there's some Democrats in them and some principled people. One of them got his hands on a drone and started taking pictures of towns after the Syrian army had destroyed them. I remember those pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we probably, yeah. On the battlefield, they now not merely have drones, they have anti drones, and they're shooting down most of the drones.
So that's drones fighting other drones.
Or missiles or anti aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, drones now are mostly relatively lightweight, relatively slow airplanes,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have ways to avoid radar and so on. So, in fact, what I believe is happening in a place like Russia and the Ukraine is each side is sending out possibly dozens every day, most of which are shot down. We just saw this in the Red Sea. where the Houthis are shooting drones and missiles at shipping, and the U.S. guided missile cruisers are out there shooting down almost all of them,
Hmm.
but not all. 3 have scored hits so far, none of them significant. But it's it's a choke point there.
Hmm.
To get to the Suez Canal, you have to go through the Red Sea.
Right.
The Red Sea, at its south end, is very close to Ethiopia. Aden was the great British base that controlled everything on the way to India. That is currently controlled by call them a nationality, the Houthis, who rebelled against the government that was supported by Saudi Arabia and have been winning. These guys are very good fighters, or very experienced fighters, at least. They
Hmm.
held off the Saudi and the Emirates Air Force that jumped into that war a few years ago. Brutal, high, very high cost in deaths, probably in the hundreds of thousands,
Wow.
many of them from typhoid. Uh, and the Houthis survived, didn't even give up much ground in all of that. And when I say experienced, they have been fighting for their independence, this ethnic group, for 700 years.
What?
Yeah, it's all over the histories. You have the great travelers that we know. There were only a few people who traveled around the world and wrote about it back in the 12th century and around then.
Hmm.
Ibn Battuta is the one who's best known, who went through the Arab world and all the way to China and wrote about it. And he's a primary source for a whole lot. And that's there. The history of that part of the world before the British and French took it over in the mid and late 19th century. And then when they discovered oil, really got involved in it around World War One, is incredibly complicated. We just had an Iranian missile and probably drone attack on Kurdistan. Do you know where and what Kurdistan is?
No. Tell me that.
It's not a country officially.
Mm.
However, the Kurds have definitely set up a full country with a full government with massive American support that basically broke off from Iraq first under the and has been fighting for independence. Well, Kurds are there in Syria and in Turkey. In Iraq, they have won their own state. How far back does that go? The Kurds have generally been inside something like the Ottoman Empire.
Wow.
Uh,
You're talking
for,
like 500 years.
well, somewhere around in the 13th century or so,
Hmm.
there was a great Muslim hero named Saladin. Saladin took Jerusalem back from the Crusaders. He is one of the most important people in the history of the Arab cause there. Not exactly the Arab cause, although he spoke Arabic. He was a Kurd who wound up conquering, well, personally controlling Egypt,
Hmm.
and then went north and conquered Jerusalem. That's
Hmm.
about 700 years ago.
Wow. Okay, so
He,
bring this around, David. It's a fascinating history lesson, but how does this tie into what's going on now with the AI and the AI weaponry and I know the so-called pirate guys are creating havoc in the peninsula area, in the Sinai Peninsula area. Are they using AI as well? I mean, well,
I
give
don't
us a little
know
insight.
what the Navy has inside their missiles and drones. They're certainly tracking all the ships in the Red Sea.
Hmm.
They're trying to identify targets that are tied into Israel and not, for example, the Chinese there are making a point of, or the Russians in the Red Sea, who are sending oil to China via the Suez Canal, then the Red Sea, and then the
Hmm.
Straits of Malaysia, and so on. Russia has sold an enormous amount of oil to India and China, tens, maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars worth since the war, and all our boycotts. That's why one of the reasons our boycotts aren't working very well.
Hmm.
Uh, and so they certainly have sophisticated air. Their weapons mostly come from Iran, whereas the Persians and the Iranians have been fighting against the Saudis and their allies, oh, 800 years or so.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's been very intense. Now, when we're talking about these groups who stay together as a group that I'm talking about, I know the history going back 700, 800 years in several of these. Uh, some of us go back even further. I'm Jewish, and my people have been in there and held together even without a state for almost 2,000 years,
Hmm.
but held together and stayed strong and stayed through themselves. Remember the Good Samaritan in the Bible? What do
Absolutely.
you what do you know about the Samaritans?
I know anything about the people. I know the story of the Samaritan, who stopped and helped a total stranger who was disabled in the road. But is there a people called Samaritans? Is that what you're
Not
saying?
only were there people called Samaritans, a few hundred, maybe a few thousand, are still there living
Hmm.
in a colony in Palestine
Hmm. Wow.
or in the occupied West Bank.
Hmm.
Uh, and the Yazidi in Iraq, who were almost getting wiped out by the different Iraqis, have been fighting to survive and so on. So I don't know why their national bodies survive so much longer. But getting back to the technology, which is what this show is about,
Hmm.
the US sent a number of ships into the Red Sea. We now have bombed them 3 times, but even before that, we had ships there that were trying to act defensively. The US, oh, probably since I was a boy making plastic airplane models, and that was a long time ago, has been trying to find ways to shoot down missiles and planes. And for the last 15 or 20 years, have had incredibly sophisticated guided missile cruisers and similar ships that go where the battle is, total radar, total control. And when we're talking about a battle today where you're seeing 8 drones coming in unpredictably across 100 miles, you couldn't track and hit them without some very sophisticated AI. To you and me, we think AI became a big thing uh, just over a year ago when ChatGPT came out. But actually, AI became much more effective and sophisticated between 2005 and 2012. And since 2012, it's worked really well. We just haven't seen it on the consumer side. So companies like Google and Amazon used massive amounts of AI, hundreds of engineers working on it. And we know Alexa and Siri that talk to us on our phones and so on.
Mm-hmm.
That, of course, is AI recognizing your voice and talking back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, thousands of engineers at the large US companies have been building this stuff for 10 and 15 years. It's exploded since 2013 when neural networks proved to be really effective. I could tell you that story too, but I'm talking too much. Anyway, I am sure the same skills are being applied in our air and missile defense.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I've been surprised how many missiles they've been shooting down from Palestine. And before
Has that
that,
been quantified somewhere? Do we know? Is somebody tracking that?
nobody's tracking it, but we know. Well, we have the Israelis talking about how they shot down
Mm-hmm.
13 today,
Okay.
and to run that battlefield across tens and hundreds of miles, you could not have done it without using AI.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty sure it's there.
Mm-hmm.
AI makes so many things more effective. It's been expensive and difficult until the last 2 or 3 years. So you saw a Google and an Amazon using it, and the military is using it. Uh, but it's exploding, and the AI people are very afraid because AI makes almost everything easier, like learning how to build a bomb,
Mm-hmm.
or what really scares people, coming up with a chemical or biological weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, there's information out there about how to make smallpox virus. That has been part of the lab work being done by people who want to make sure we never see smallpox again. With AI, I could probably find that and have AI turn that into a recipe for me.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that's one worth going to because it's really interesting. One of the things that's happened in the last year is several automated biology and chemistry labs where you can where those have been automated, had automated equipment for years. But what controls the automated equipment? What tells the automated equipment what to do? And in the last 6 months, I know at least two major facilities that have developed software based on large language models that can say, if you want to build a, yeah, this is a protein or a messenger RNA, can just tell, literally tell, or type in to their computer. And all the steps in the automated lab are then figured out by the AI.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as I say, I know two places doing it and they're just getting started, but that's the kind of thing that is going on now.
Well,
This is
let's hope that
wonderful
we
to
see
watch.
some breakthroughs on that side of the ledger, Dave, because this warfare stuff is really scary, especially when you look at areas of the world, the Middle East, where the conflicts go back, the tribal conflicts go back hundreds and thousands of years. I mean, that seems like some intractable conflicts that are just going to get exacerbated with the introduction of AI into the mix. I don't see a good outcome there.
Do you know where and when it broke between what we now call Sunni Arabs and Shiite Arabs?
No, I don't.
Shiites were the supporters of Ali, who
Mm-hmm.
was the son-in-law or the son of the son-in-law of Muhammad
Mm-hmm.
of the 8th century.
Mm. Wow.
And there was a battle between uh, those people who were in control, this tribe that Muhammad came from, the Qurayshi, and they put their caliph in, and the people who thought that Ali should have been the caliph. That's in the 8th century. And as we know, Shiites and Sunnis are killing each other by the thousands today.
Mm-hmm.
And you give more weapons. The people who make weapons say, and it's the same thing on computer security. Sure, it can make the weapons more effective and more lethal, but we can use that for defending against them. And how that's going to play out, way beyond what I understand.
Yeah. Okay, we got to take a break here, Dave. Yeah, this is fascinating stuff. We've been talking about warfare and AI's role that it plays. They're really just not solving, but kind of ratcheting up, it seemed to me, conflicts. And I don't know where it's going to play out. But anyway, this is Community and Technology on WHCR 90.3 FM with Dave Burstein and Stu Reid. Stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to talk about some other things, maybe some more positive things that AI is doing, as well as some of the stuff that's going on with the community networks around the city. Stay tuned. Be right back after a brief musical break.
Life is like a song to sing with measured beats and phrases and bended notes and some repeats. Music through the ages that brings the highs, the lows, the swells. Sometimes it's for an ending, bringing other songs to sing, ascending, descending. I'm learning how to listen, how to hear a melody, how to hear the song I'm singing, how to feel and let it be, and listen to the song, knowing how it goes, and listen for the melody that flows. Music is a lover with shiny golden wings that whispers in the lover's ear and dances when it sings, and sings a variation on an everlasting theme. It's either love or sorrow on the scene. Learning how to listen for the songs I name and sign and claim as a possession and say that they are mine, 'cause everybody knows that songs come from out of the blue, and I'm learning how to hear the changes too. I'm learning how to listen to the rhythm of the night, how to keep it simple, how to make it sweet and light, smooth and free and easy, or slamming in the jam. And oh, for just a moment, the music that I am. how to holler, sing the blues. I'm learning how to rise above and wear somebody's shoes. Learning how to listen, for the song was given me. I'm learning how to listen and be free. I'm learning how to listen, how to hear a melody, how to hear the song I'm singing, how to feel and let it be, and listen for the song, knowing how it goes, and listen for the melody that flows, and listen for the melody that flows.
Okay, we're back. Community Technology with Dave Burstein and Stu Reid on WHR 90.3 FM. Dave, where are we in this conversation?
Well, I think I'm going to change what we're going to do in the show. I'm all prepped with the survey that literally went out to 2,700 AI scientists. An organization in California, in Berkeley, went to the ledgers of all the big shows, found all the people writing papers, and sent out a questionnaire, including, do you think the AIs will destroy people? Will they treat us like we treat dogs? The answer, we know, what a lot of people have been giving, is it just may happen, although we hope it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what I want to talk about right now because of what we had in the first half of the show. Let's talk about some of the good work being done. You're out there working almost every day in Brooklyn. Tell us what you're doing.
Okay, not just Brooklyn, but Harlem and Manhattan as well. We've been working for many years. I say we, my partner Doug Frazier and I, we have partnered with residents, Dave, public housing residents around the city, and have been doing things utilizing broadband and community networks. This is going back, it goes back quite a while, but we have evolved to the point working with residents who some years ago came to us and said, what can we do with this technology? And, one of the things that we heard early on was whenever you hear anything about what's going on in public housing, it's always negative. And we kind of looked at each other and said, well, why don't we give a voice to the residents so that other stories can be told, so that folks can control their own narrative about what's going on in our communities. So we started doing live streaming. And this is going back maybe 7, 8 years ago, and created a number of programs. One that was really popular, still is, called the Wisdom Table, where we sit around a table with predominantly seniors, but not exclusively, and they talk about what's going on in the community. They talk about issues that they want to talk about, whether it be healthcare, whether it be what's going on with their grandkids, whether it's food, whether it's recipes that were passed on by their elders. So many different topics that relate to the quality of life in our communities. And really popular stuff. We probably did over 100 shows over the last few years. And, when COVID came, Dave, there was a special challenge to keep it going. We had been getting together physically in a location. We had built a studio in East Harlem at Johnson Houses. We had a physical studio in West Harlem at Grant Houses. where folks would come together and talk about this stuff. And we'd invite special guests to come in, whether they be legal experts, whether they be healthcare experts, whether they be education experts, whatever. But then COVID hit. And all of a sudden, we couldn't come together face to face. But luckily, we discovered Zoom. And when I say we, I'm talking about regular people now starting to get familiar with using the virtual way to communicate with each other. And we started doing our programming that way. So we started streaming remotely with folks from wherever they happen to be. And one of the issues that was of so much concern when COVID hit was trying to get reliable information about what was going on, not just nationally, but also in the community. And everybody tuned into the national broadcasts and heard from Dr. Fauci and some of the other experts, as well as some of the not so experts that were on the air talking about bleach injections and other things like that. But we were able to find some Black MDs, male and female doctors and scientists who would come on our show and speak with residents about what was going on. And one particular doctor down in Louisiana, Dr. Velva Bowles, she's an MD and a PhD in physics. And she came on very early on and talked about natural remedies. She talked about how to avoid the contamination of the COVID virus. A lot of stuff that we just were not hearing from mainstream media. Another physician came on, and at one point, Dave, this one particular show, we had over 3,000 folks listening to the show on our YouTube channel. So it was really resonated with the community. The other thing that we kind of ramped up.
Let me interrupt you there, because you're talking about something that makes sense to me, and I understand why it's important. And we've worked together on things for 20 years. I first met you when you were wiring the South Bronx for broadband before the cable company or Verizon got there. And so I've been watching. Something I think I learned over the years, because I've been reporting broadband all that time, is that most broadband projects don't work very well. And we had a couple of radio shows about that. Why do most projects fail, and why does yours have a much better chance?
Okay. The simple answer is most broadband projects are designed and implemented by major companies, by government, by entities that are not of and from the community, and their approach is very paternalistic. And their MO is, well, let me just come in and drop the technology on the people, and once they have it, everything should be okay. Well, we found that's not the case at all. Our whole approach is to work from the ground up and to involve the actual recipients of the service that you're talking about providing in designing the networks, in designing how, where they are, and most importantly, designing how to use them and what's on the networks. Because Dave, one of the things that we have learned over the years is that, just because you have technology, that doesn't solve problems. It's all about how you use the technology, what's on the technology, how do you increase your quality of life using the technology. And for us, that's the whole key. And so we've been successful because we have involved, and we're partnered, not just involved, we partner with local folks on the ground, residents, primarily in public housing, to actually build the networks, to put the networks in, to put the radios in, to run wires, to run cables, to run the Wi-Fi radios. And one thing that happens right away is there's a sense of ownership of the technology. And then secondly, and again, not to beat a dead horse, but most importantly, how do we use the technology? And again, residents, folks on the ground came to us as community technologists and said, we need to be able to tell our own story. We need to be able to get our message out. We need to be able to communicate with each other. So we would help design ways for them to do that. And when you do that, when the networks are designed by and for the people that are using them, you got a high chance of success, as opposed to the top down approach. A good example is the New York City's Big Apple Connect program, where they just come in and give away a free internet connection to low income folks, but there's no follow on, there's no follow up, there's no creation of ownership. And I guess even most important, that there's no sense of economic development. That's the other thing that is so lacking in our communities, Dave, is economic development. And this technology is a tool that can be used to help make that happen, to help jumpstart so much in the community that will increase the economic well-being and quality of life for the residents. So that has to be the approach, and it has to be led by folks on the ground, not by folks up on the top who are the so-called experts. In my mind, those projects have been doomed to failure. And
let me come in there to confirm that. I was deeply involved in the broadband planning in 2009, 2010, 2011.
Mm-hmm.
There was a stimulus to get us out of the stock market crash and the economic crash that followed.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that money was dedicated to outreach, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
It failed miserably.
Yeah.
Nobody was admitting that in Washington. Nobody in Washington wanted to believe it. But when I was able to do things, in Chicago, there was one study that was actually had a control. Some schools were pulled, and some neighborhoods were pulled into the program, and others weren't.
Mm-hmm.
The ones with the program had less take-up of broadband because of things. California was ridiculous. They said they had influenced 700,000 people or something like that. What did that mean? It meant one of their people went on a radio show and talked.
Wow.
And certainly very few of the people they were trying to reach us. And I was able to look at the number of people who subscribed to broadband in California, because
mm-hmm.
this was big enough that it should have shown in the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't working.
Yeah.
Now, I know those programs came mostly from well-meaning people,
mm-hmm.
University groups, and so on, and even some larger community groups or some citywide groups, but they all failed.
Yeah. My experience, Dave. Because our coalition of folks applied to both rounds of that big federal funding that you were talking about. It was called the Broadband Technology Opportunity Program, or BTOP. And under President Obama, his first administration, he put out about a $3 billion RFP looking for projects. And then his second administration, he did it again. We thought we were really well positioned. We were partnered with our residents, with public housing folks. We had just recently received a grant from New York State to do a hybrid fiber wireless network in low-income housing in New York. But for whatever reason, we were denied what I thought was a really good application in both rounds. And
because you weren't good politicians, you hadn't publicized the work you were doing. I know the work you were doing, so I know that you're credible.
Well, nobody like us, guys. I mean, not that there are a lot of folks like us, Dave, but the guys that got the money were the usual suspects. I remember reading that one of the guys, you know the guys, I can't call the name, Larry Strickland, talking about, well, we're not going to fund any new players. We're not about providing any competition to the or helping stimulate any competition to the incumbents. So all that money went to the guys that were already there who caused the inequities in the first place. And I thought it was a shame. I was so disappointed in that whole initiative, Dave. We did know politicians. We knew city council people, we knew state people. We were beating the drum, but that had zero effect on what the feds did with that disbursement of that money. And I don't see a big change today. All the money
There's
that Biden is putting
$2.5
out there.
billion
Yeah.
that is going to be spent supposedly on digital equity in the community.
Who's it going to, Dave? Who's it going? Who's getting the money?
Well, as far as I know, almost nobody who's part of the community and able to effectively reach
Thank
the
you.
community.
Thank you. So
Almost nobody.
as
But
my
let's
uncle
find
used to,
26.
as one of my favorite uncles used to say, ain't nothing changed but the date. Yeah.
How much time do we have?
We've got about 5 minutes, Dave, 5, 6 minutes
Why
more.
don't you keep talking about what you see on the ground, what people
Okay.
care
Well,
about?
one of the other things
That's
I
the
wanted
kind
to
of
talk
thing that we can bring
Yeah, that
that others
I wanted to
don't.
talk about that really got brought home to us during the pandemic, and that was a walkie-talkie network that we were able to put in place with leadership in public housing. We came up with a whole training program where we train folks how to communicate on mobile radios. And when I say how to communicate, there's a certain protocol. A lot of mobile radio transmission is regulated by the FCC. And not only that, when you're on walkie-talkies and mobile radios, you want to be able to talk to first responders and others that may not be in your group, in your work group. So there's a common language, there's a common protocol, there's a way to talk when you're on a walkie-talkie or a mobile radio. So we put together a curriculum that taught our resident partners how to do that, how to communicate on the radio. And we used not just mobile radio, but we also used the Wi-Fi network, because on the Wi-Fi you can have your cellular phone does not have to have any service, but the Wi-Fi still works on your cell phone. So you're able to go on, use the Wi-Fi using your dead mobile radio, if you will, and talk. And we initially started doing weekly radio checks where we created a radio group within a housing development where they would talk to each other. And again, this was really important during COVID because there was no way to check on people. You had elderly folks that couldn't get out. Yeah, most folks couldn't come out because of the stay at home mandates from the government. So you had folks that were isolated, that couldn't get medicine, couldn't get food. So this walkie-talkie network that was really put together and run by residents became a lifeline. And it evolved even after COVID. It evolved to the point where now you have residents that are doing daily building checks. And in so many of the public housing developments, Dave, you have high-rise buildings, 10, 15, 20 stories high. And things like the elevator service is critical. When the elevator goes down, you have folks that may be stranded for hours, if not days, until that elevator is fixed. So
And it happens a lot.
Yeah, it does.
My
It happens a
brother
lot.
used
I mean,
to
there were
drive
I think
ambulances
there's
as
something like
well.
3,000 plus elevators in New York City public housing. So the failure, and they're old. They're like 40, 50 years old, many of them. So the failure rate is high. So
And
this communication network that the residents are now using is a way for them to monitor and keep track of what's happening within the development in terms of elevators, in terms of heat and hot water, and just the basic amenities that they need to maintain a decent quality of life within their community. So that's something that came out of COVID, and a use of technology that I surprised me, in fact, because I didn't realize all of the ways and all of the needs. Again, this is something that the residents developed. The residents decided, oh, we need to talk to each other every day about what's going on in the building. We need to have a morning and an evening radio check where we talk about, are the elevators working? Is the hot water available? Is the heat working in the wintertime? And then track the whole complaint procedure that goes to manage. There's a whole trouble ticket procedure in public housing where you got to report to management, and there are all kind of games that get played. Oh, we didn't know that, we didn't blah blah blah. And again, this is a way for folks to take control of their own quality of life and their own really public safety within their own community using technology. So I've been really gratified and happy with the way that folks have taken hold of this, Dave. And again, this is not something that we figured out. We didn't figure this out. This is something that folks on the ground figured out how to use the technology to really improve their lives. So again, just back to your earlier point about the difference between successful community networks and unsuccessful. Successful when the folks that need it, that use it, are in design and control of the technology. That was a big takeaway for me.
And what radio station are we on?
Oh, we're on WHCR 90.3 FM. And they're certainly one of our community partners in all this. We have not done all this stuff by ourselves by any means. There's been a whole coalition of folks. And I also just want to mention the Internet Society. The Internet Society, of which you and I, Dave, of course, are both members of the New York chapter. They helped us, and they've been a partner for a number of years, and they helped funding back in the early COVID days. They helped fund a bunch of this community streaming and community network stuff that I just kind of recap for you and for our listeners. So the Internet Society and the Internet Society Foundation has been a big supporter and a big part of this whole coalition of folks that are helping to make community technology work for our folks.
And I think we're just about out of time.
Yeah, we just about are. Okay, I think I'm happy to be able to talk about some positive stuff, Dave. I mean, listen to what's going on in the Middle East and the tribal conflicts that go back, for so long, and the way that technology is just, I'm not solving, but exacerbating. It's good to see how we are using technology right here on the ground in our communities to help improve our lives. I'm happy to be part of that coalition of folks that are working to do that. Any final thoughts from you before we sign off, Dave?
Well, this AI stuff that I've been spending the last year on is fascinating, powerful, will change a lot of our lives over the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's being controlled mostly by a few big companies and just a handful of governments, large corporations, and not you and me.
Mm-hmm.
So how to change that is a very hard question.
Yeah.
That a lot of very good people are trying to find a better way to run it.
Mm-hmm. Well, my hope, Dave, and right now it's just a hope because I don't have the skill set to jump in there. But my hope is that just as some of this broadband technology and communication tools have filtered down to regular people, and we and they are using it to help improve our lives, I'm hoping the same thing happens with AI. So stay tuned. Okay. Thank you, Dave. It's been Dave Burstein and Stu Reid on Community and Technology on WHCR 90.3 FM every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Tune in. Just might learn something. Thanks and good night.